Hi, my name is Cindy Cisneros. I'm a certified creativity coach and a licensed professional therapist. And this video goes with the article that I am releasing today called "Should I Quit Social Media? The Mental Health Toll on Creative Minds." And this is one of the longer articles that I've written. I just felt once I started writing it, I had more and more to say. So I'm going to try, as usual, to cover the highlights in this video and pin it to the article. In case the article feels too lengthy, you still get some of the highlights of the article in this video. I felt like this was just apt because it's something, as usual, my articles are inspired a lot by the things that the clients that are in coaching and counseling with me bring up. And I feel like it might be something, therefore, that's on a lot of other people's minds. And so I wanted to bring it to you in an article. Social media is such a part of our daily lives, but there's a lot of risks that go along with the benefits, especially for those of us that are highly creative. Now, if you're familiar with me and my work, I talk about creativity as a set of personality traits that we have. And sometimes those of us that are highly creative are in creative professions do have creative pursuits. But more importantly, we have a set of personality traits that hang together in what I call a highly creative personality. Now, sometimes this is grouped together or does have features of other types of neurodiversity, such as ADHD or autism spectrum, even something that you've seen maybe popping up in literature or social media nowadays, a UDHD. And so I am going to cover some of the risks and benefits in the article for other types of neurodiversity as well, because highly creative people are often diagnosed or find themselves with signs and symptoms of these. But ultimately, if you have elements of neurodiversity within you, there are things that I think you ought to consider with your behaviors with social media. The first question that I wanted to consider is social media toxic? And I wanted to go to the research and look at, yes, it's toxic. No, it's not toxic, and give you some research on both sides. You can look at the article at some of the research that exists on both sides. The bottom line to the research on is social media toxic is you should use social media mindfully. In other words, you should be aware of how social media use impacts you. I moved on with the article to give you some specific guidelines about how, as a creative person or as a neurodiverse person, it may impact you, and some things to look for and be aware of. One thing that I started with, and you're free to have your own opinion on this, and I wanted to start with the metaverse because it has a pretty strong reputation when it comes to social media and whether it's good or bad for you. So I have a separate section in this article just talking about the metaverse, pros and cons, and what it means for your mental health as a creative. And we start out by talking about opportunities that it offers you as a creative in terms of business, networking, collaboration. And then we move on to some of the cons of the metaverse and the risks it can have for your mental health. And these are things that I want you to be aware of as a creative person, as a neurodiverse person. These are maybe things that you are considering, but if you aren't, I hope that you will. Social comparison on the metaverse is a risk for you when it comes to your self-esteem. And I'm going to go through this list rapid fire, but there's more information in the article for you to consider. Burnout and mental exhaustion is a risk for you as a creative person on the metaverse. Vicarious trauma and emotional overload is a risk for you. Now, the next two are something that I feel are especially important to think about. And one is algorithm-driven addiction and time-draining effect. And what I mean by that is the metaverse intends to keep you engaged. That's the nature of the business. Now, for those of us that are neurodiverse, we can be especially vulnerable to going down rabbit holes. And the metaverse is really trying to keep you in a rabbit hole. And so we can really lose time disproportionately in an unhealthy way as compared to others. Read more in the article about what that means and how that happens. But one of the reasons that happens is this emphasis on extreme and psychological bias. Now, if you're familiar with psychology and research bias, we know that research and response bias online happens naturally already in extremes. You're going to get feedback from people who really love something or who really hate something, and that's going to keep people engaged or responding online. And so already the content that you're going to be given in the metaverse is going to be in extremes. You're not going to get the middle ground, which is where the majority of experience lies. And so when you're getting information and feedback on the metaverse, understand that your empathetic and sensitive soul is experiencing the extremes of reality, which we then absorb as normative, because on the metaverse that is normative, but that's just the nature of the metaverse. That isn't normative. Read the article to help that kind of sink in, but I think that's a really important nuance that we lose and can really injure our creative sensibilities and souls and hearts and brains. So I talk about a light recommendation, should you quit the metaverse, and going through the pros and cons. And it's a decision for you to make yourself. It's not a decision I'm going to hand to you. Just like in therapy, I'm never going to hand you a decision, but see if you can make a healthy decision for yourself. And then the article continues into social media and neurodiversity, risks and impacts for ADHD, AuDHD, and creative personality traits. And there's a list for each one. And so, for example, with ADHD, the list focuses on how social media in general can present a lot of distraction and overwhelm. For ADHD, it can make social media unhealthy for you. There's specific examples in that section about ADHD, like task switching, endless scrolling, and time blindness. I'll leave you to look at those if that section applies to you. Now, when we're talking about AuDHD, we're talking about those who are potentially experiencing symptoms and signs both on the autism spectrum and challenges with ADHD. And so some of the things you'll find in that section that put you at risk of unhealthy social media use are things like sensory overload, social expectations, difficulty with social interaction, which is made even more difficult when you're removed from being in person and it's online, masking and imposter syndrome, anxiety of comparison. So take a look if those things seem to resonate with you at the further explanations in the article. And then creative personality traits. We're going to talk about some of the creative personality traits that you have and some of the risks for overuse or use of social media that can make it unhealthy for you: sensitivity to criticism, validation seeking, vulnerability to compassion fatigue and burnout, emotional exhaustion, overexposure. If those things resonate with you, please take a look at that section. Overall, I want you to be able to start to understand maybe how some of the ways you feel after you use social media could be coming from within your personality, so you can make some healthy decisions about your use. And then, because on Creatively, I talk a lot too about your creative business. And I know that one of the best uses for social media for us is for our creative businesses. There is a section about business use of social media, along with some tips about psychological tips on how to use social media well and safely to protect yourself from things like emotional overload, technical tips as well of settings you can use on your devices to streamline and do your social media in a way that doesn't overload you. I told you this article was quite long because I kept thinking of more and more things that just felt really important. And there's some final thoughts on that section. And then the article wraps up, it does wrap up, with strategies for making social media a healthier presence in your life. I am, again, by no means telling you what to do with social media. I want you to understand some of the risks, some of the benefits, and to make a decision for yourself about how you do or don't want to use it in your life. Anywhere from none of it's healthy for me to here's how it is healthy for me. And I want to give you support and strategies for all of those things and anywhere in between. So in the last section, we're going through strategies of how you can put support around continued use of social media in your life and make good decisions about how that can be healthy for you, safer for you, more of a benefit for you as a creative person, as a neurodiverse person. Or you may even decide as you continue to use these tools and strategies, the better you feel, the more to clamp things down, the better you feel. You may find yourself using social media less and less, or you may find that they're not helping and you don't need them. But here's some tools and tricks, tips for you to use and try. And that's in the last section. So give it some thought, give it a read, make an informed and mindful choice. If you need some support and guidance, of course, I'm available to you. There are links around wherever you found this video to reach out. Please don't hesitate to reach out. You're welcome to a free 15-minute discovery session on some next steps. There are a bunch of articles and studies and resources that I referenced to write this article beneath. If you're interested in additional reading, make good choices. I hope it was helpful. Stay creative. Bye.